We are live, and here, Chef AJ. Thank you. Hello, and thank you for accepting my invitation.
Of course.
And we are all very honored and very excited to have you in our group and hear about your journey and your success and your experience. And in the beginning, I would like you to share with us your journey. Actually, I would like you to share with us your background and what got you into this whole food plant-based lifestyle.
Yeah. Well, my first correction is I like to call it whole food plant exclusive lifestyle, only because when you say whole food plant based, there leaves options for things that aren't plant based, like animal products. So I like to say whole food plant exclusive. Yeah, a lot of people don't like the word vegan because that connotes, well, actually I'm vegan. Right here, I'm wearing my shirt, vegan since 1977. But I never liked the word whole food plant based because the basis is it's not just based in plants, it's only plants. So what got me into it was I always loved animals. Ever since I was 4 years old, we always had one of these at home.
Mine is asleep right now. I wish I took her.
Okay. And she's the rescue from the shelter. And I've always loved animals. And I made the connection early on that we did love some animals that we called pets and ate other animals called dinner. And I wanted to be vegan or vegetarian ever since I was a little kid, but my mom wouldn't let me. I was born in 1960 in Chicago, and there was no Neil Barnard or Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine or internet, and there was no vegans. I didn't even know the word vegan back then. And so my mom said, no, but I still wouldn't eat certain animals, meaning like, okay, so we were Jewish, which means there were certain animals we just didn't eat. We didn't eat pigs, any type of pig. We didn't eat any kind of shellfish, lobster, shrimp, crab, oysters, clams. So lots of things we didn't eat. And even when we did eat meat, there were certain cuts you couldn't eat. So it was very limited the amount of animals we ate anyway. And I certainly wouldn't eat anything that looked like an animal. So I couldn't eat a rib, for example, because it looked like a rib. I couldn't eat a fish because it looked like a fish. So what did that leave me? Well, yeah, I guess I could eat a can of tuna growing up, and I could probably eat some ground soup if I didn't see it. I just didn't want to eat animals. I didn't want to participate in this. But my mom wouldn't let me. And nowadays I would have been stronger. I would have resisted her and said no, but she was a single mom and I didn't really have very much money. And so I just, I went along like most family members do. But the minute I left home in 1977, September 1st, to attend the University of Pennsylvania, I became a vegan and I just never ate another animal again. And that's over. Oh, I look like I was born in the 80s. Thank you. Thank you so much. I didn't have time for makeup today. I appreciate that. I saw that nice comment. So I went to become a veterinarian. I wanted to become at University of Pennsylvania, but instead I officially became a vegan or a vegetarian. And then I got exposed to the ethical part of this. So on my very first day of the job at the University of Pennsylvania, I was assigned to work in the laboratory of a veterinarian because that's how it was when you're on scholarship. And the very first day at work, he hands me this tank of live salamanders. And he said he needed me to cut all of their heads off. And I'm like, why? Because I was very squeamish anyway. Like I was a person that could never fish just because it was so gross to me. Like, first of all, putting a live worm on a hook. And then, I just, that whole thing. And in my religion of Judaism, we don't wear fur coats. We don't hunt. So I was always aware of that part of compassion. But I didn't understand why he wanted me to cut the heads off these living creatures. And he explained he was doing animal research, something that I'm very much against now, and I was then. He was doing protein lens regeneration experiments in the amphibian, and he only needed their eye. Well, I was 17, and there's something about a man in a white coat or a woman in a white coat where you kind of do what they say, and there's actually something in psychology that's talked about in the book The Pleasure Trap called the Milgram effect. So I did cut the head off of one salamander, and I literally puked my guts up. out. I thought I would like committed murder, you know, and I went to the student health center and it was just horrible. And I said, I can't do this anymore. And so what they did is they had me be just the person that cleaned all the lab equipment. And so I never dealt with any of the animals again, which means basically I failed out of college because my major was pre-vet and you were required to dissect the cat and the rat and the frog, and I couldn't do it. Now, if it was today, I would have emailed Dr. Barnard and I would have had rights and there would have been other way to learn these things. So anyway, I became a vegetarian instead of a veterinarian. So I had the ethical piece in place from the beginning, but I didn't have the health piece in place. And in 1977, there was no vegan food out there. Like people born today, you can get vegan food everywhere.
You're having some difficulties. Are you having some difficulties?
I can see you really good and I can hear you really good.
Okay. Now it's all back. Yeah, everything is fine.
Yeah, you know, yeah, the technology, I do these technologies too. It's not always perfect. And the only way you know sometimes is if people tell you that they can't see or hear. But actually, sometimes it's them. So anyway, so today you could go to the 99-cent store and buy almond milk, oat milk, you know, all kinds of milk analogs. Whereas in 1977, there didn't even have soy milk yet or powdered soy milk. So instead of eating the diet that I eat today, which is plant exclusive of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes, I ate junk food. And I ate candies, cakes, cookies, pies, and ice cream. I drank soda. I drank Slurpees for breakfast. This was all vegan, but it wasn't health promoting. So at the age of probably around 20 or so, I ended up close to 200 pounds, which is almost double what I weigh now. And then at the age of 40, I ended up with the precursor to colon cancer, precancerous polyps. And even though I didn't eat meat or dairy, I had a really, really bad vegan diet. I had a junk food vegan diet. And so my mission today is to get people to, yes, be vegan because it's the awesomest way to eat for the animals and for the planet, but for your health as well. And I believe, because I'm also a chef, that I can actually make healthy food that isn't vegan junk food taste really good. And I proved that to myself last night because I've been teaching at culinary schools for about 18 years now. And I always feel that if I give people the recipes of how I really eat, which is without sugar, oil, flour, alcohol, salt, they won't like it. And I said, I'm going to go out on a ledge and I'm going to teach in a mainstream culinary school. I'm not going to call it ultimate weight loss. I'm just going to call it, you know, I think we called the class Eat Up, Slim Down, like healthy eating after the new year or whatever. And it was recipes that I could actually eat, all of them. And these were people that didn't even know me. They just signed up because it was a class, and they liked the food and they loved the food. So I think that food can be healthy and it can be delicious. And that's really what I try to teach people, that it's awesome to be vegan.
I totally agree. I made a soup yesterday, sauce free, and it was awesome. And I gave it to my kids and they didn't even realize that there was no salt in it. And all they asked for was give us some lemon to just sprinkle it over.
Right. It up.
Oh my God, lemon is much better than salt.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's a wonderful story. And thank you for sharing it with us. I would like to start with the questions. And there is one question I have in mind that I meant to ask you. If you tried different whole food plant-based protocols, and why did you settle on the one that you settled on, and which protocols didn't work for you, or and why do you think it did?
Oh, that is really a wonderful question, and I love it. Thank you. So I actually follow the protocol of my mentor, Dr. Alan Goldhammer, at the True North Health Center. And I think the reason that it worked the best for me, and by the way, the other protocols, it's not like they didn't work. You know, it's just I wasn't able to lose the weight that I wanted to lose and recover and manage my food addiction. And I think the reason is for me, and this is not for everybody, is that I believe that I suffer from what's called food addiction, which is refined food addiction, which is sugar, flour, and alcohol. Now, there are a lot of people that can have sugar, flour, and alcohol and not be addicted to it and not be overweight from it. It's sort of like there are people that can drink alcohol and not become alcoholic. But if you're an alcoholic, it's not you. There's people that can have sugar and flour and oil and salt and not suffer from discordant eating or weight issues. But if you are overweight or struggling or having cravings, then it's probably not you. So it wasn't until I took out all these, what I call actually chemicals, because sugar and flour and oil and salt, alcohol, these aren't really foods. They don't exist in nature in any concentrated form. They're really more chemicals that we add to the food that cause us to overeat, that fool the brain satiety mechanisms, that cause a much greater release of dopamine. So it wasn't until I learned this from Dr. Goldhammer by going to True North as a patient in January of 2011 and reading his book, The Pleasure Trap, that I understood that for me, these foods were a problem. So that even though some other really wonderful vegan programs that work fantastic for other people, that say it's okay to sprinkle a little sugar on your food, a little salt, have a little flour, if you're a food addict, it's really not you, because those little bits on your food, even on the surface, cause us to have, or at least cause me to have cravings so that I want more and more and more. So it was the taking out of these substances, chemicals that really aren't whole foods, that made it really easy for me to lose weight and stay out of what they call the pleasure trap. So again, I always tell people, I do a weekly show on my Facebook page called Weight Loss Wednesday. And I tell people, do the least restrictive program that you can do, but still get the results you want. So the way I eat is very austere, and most people say it's too extreme, but it does work beautifully for weight loss and food addiction. But if you can't do it, then, loosen the screws a little bit to what you can do, as long as you're getting the results you want.
Thank you. Yes, I agree. Have you ever tried the fully raw diet, like being fully raw? And what's your view on it? What's your experience? And what do you think about long-term health and if it's possible to sustain that?
You ask really excellent questions. And so, yes, I was raw for a couple of years. And what I want to say, first of all, is that anytime you get away from the standard American diet of junk food, even with diets that I don't like or agree with, like paleo, anytime you get away from the standard American diet, you're going to see improvements in people's health. And so what's nice about the raw food diet is that you aren't eating junk food. You're not eating the sugars. Well, some raw foodists will eat agave and coconut sugar, but for the most part, you're not eating refined sugars and flours. A lot of them do oil, but you are getting away from a lot of the junk food. So your health could improve. And so when I got my diagnosis of precancerous polyps, I went to a place on July 6, 2003 called the Optimum Health Institute, where you do get raw food. And I went there before I checked in, the cab took me to 7-Eleven so I could drink my last Coke Slurpee and my last regular Dr. Pepper. And I did heal from this without drugs or surgery, but I'm not so sure if it was because it was raw or because I had removed all the crap that I was eating. Now, the thing that's so great about the raw food diet is that we do need to eat raw food, whether we're vegan or not. And we should probably have, I think, at least maybe half our calories from fresh raw fruits and vegetables. There are different incarnations of the raw food diet. And so if you're doing it like an 80-10-10 diet style, which is like what Dr. Doug Graham recommends, and my friend Robbie Barbero, who'd be a great interview for you, of the Mindful Diabetic, if you do it like that, it can be really, really healthy. But a lot of times people do the raw food diet like the designer raw food diet, where it's very, very high in fat, using a lot of olive oil and coconut oil and nuts, because see, fruits and vegetables are very low in calories. They are 100 calories a pound for vegetables and 200 to 300 calories per pound for fruit. And you just can't eat enough from that unless you're eating quite a lot, like Robbie does. He eats a lot from fruit. What the raw food diet, I believe, is missing for most people is starch. And to me, that is the most missed thing in weight loss programs, because people are so afraid of eating carbs, specifically potatoes, because they think potatoes are going to make them fat, which in reality, the more potatoes you eat, the thinner you'll get. It's what you put on potatoes that make you fat, like butter, like margarine or cheese or bacon or things like that. But you can't get fat eating potatoes. They're 375 calories a pound. And interestingly enough, there's something called the SI, or satiety index. which was developed by Dr. Susanna Holt, which shows that how satiating foods are. And people think, oh, if I don't eat oil, if I don't eat fat, I won't be full. No, the most satiating food is actually the white potato. And if you don't eat enough starch, enough calories from starch, you don't experience satiety. And if you're somebody trying to lose weight or even maintain a weight loss, it's going to be really hard because fruits and vegetables are healthful, but they're so low in caloric density. And so I think the problem with the raw food diet for many people is that they can't get enough calories in from just fruits and vegetables unless they're willing to like literally be eating all day. A lot of times they're cold because they're not really getting any warm food, especially if they're living in cold climates. But it really, I think the missing element is the starch. And to me, a diet without potatoes would just be very sad. I did it for 2 years. You think it's hard to be vegan socially? Oh my God, being raw is like even harder. I was cold all the time, but here's the thing. I wasn't thin because I could not get enough calories from fruits and vegetables. I was taught that, you know, these carbs that are the mainstay of my diet now, the potatoes, rice, and beans, were evil. So what did I have to go to? The most calorically dense calories that you could have in a raw food diet, which were the nuts and the seeds and the dried fruit. So I actually maintained quite a high weight on the raw food diet. So I think there are some good things about it. You know, what I've learned from people like Dr. Michael Clapper at True North, who has a DVD, I believe it's called Digestion Made Easy. He talks about that much of what they say in the raw food movement is unfounded. The research about how that if you cook your food, you're going to destroy the metabolic enzymes or the digestive enzymes. Well, the truth is he says that we have hydrochloric acid in our stomach and they're going to get destroyed whether the food is cooked or not. But if somebody is really insistent on eating a raw food diet, I would suggest, and it's better than the standard American diet, I would suggest they read a book by Wrangham called Catching Fire. This book really opened my eyes. This guy is not a vegan. He has spoken at the McDougall weekend, but what he is, I believe, is an anthropologist. And he talked about that it wasn't until humans started cooking their food, because it's true, before fire, we didn't cook our food, but we evolved, our brains evolved on a cooked food diet, primarily cooked food. And it wasn't until humans learned to use fire, which, by the way, we are the only animals that can use it, that our brains increased in size and that we were able to really grow as a species by huge numbers. What's interesting is that even species that eat their food raw, like for example, snakes don't cook their food. They eat their whole prey raw. When they've done experiments and offered snakes cooked food, they prefer it. All species, even that eat a raw food diet, when offered cooked food, will prefer it because it is more valuable for survival. It's more calorically dense. So I think there's some really good things about the raw food diet. I don't think it's sustainable for most people, especially people that are social and that live in cold climates. I think if you're going to do a raw food diet, do it the low-fat version, the 80-10-10, and see how you feel. But again, I think that you're really missing something when you don't have starch, whether it's from potatoes or sweet potatoes or winter squashes or whole grains or legumes. You know, Dr. McDougall always talks about no starch, no satiety, that starch is to the hunger drive what breath is to the breathing drive. So again, you know, but here's the other thing. If it's working for you, keep doing it. You know, you don't have to listen to me. I mean, you can try my style out and see if it works. If the raw food diet is working for you, keep doing it. There seem to be some people that are able to thrive on it. But again, I would say get your calories from enough fruits and vegetables. Don't go to the coconut oil, the agave, and all that designer stuff.
Okay. Next question I have. One of your specialties is cravings. And I'm sure you know a lot about it. And I would like to pick, why do you think a person have certain cravings? Or crave certain food and certain tastes. I know that many people in my group are having sweet cravings. I personally more into salt. Mm-hmm. So for me, this is the only thing. And I'm very low on salt and I cut it off. And I tried your program for 3 weeks. And first week I was I was eating a lot of seaweed. I would go to Rainbow grocery store, buy a lot of seaweed, nori sheets, and just chew on it because I was missing that salt. Mm-hmm. Then I got the recommended by you tasty.
Benson's Table Tasty, yeah.
Right, Table Tasty. And I would sprinkle it all over my food, all over my vegetables. And I noticed by third week, I stopped. I mean, I could eat my vegetables without any salt. But most people I see, they crave sweets.
Yes.
So anything you have to say about this?
Right. Oh, thank you. So you guys, you really are a great interview. You're asking all my favorite subjects. So I think you're right. People either tend to crave sugar with fat or salt, or often it's salt with fat. It's sort of like we've got the people that like the potato chips and the French fries. That's the salt and the fat. Then we've got the people that like the candies, cakes, cookies, pies, and ice cream, the sugar with the fat, which was me. Now, here's the thing I want you guys to know is that you can't crave something that you've never had. So, I mean, oh yes, of course, there's certain nutritional deficiencies, like for example, pirates, they used to call them limeys because they got a disease called scurvy from vitamin C deficiency, and they would suck on limes. So yes, of course, there are times that you actually can get physiological cravings because of a nutritional deficiency. That's really rare. Most of the cravings we're talking about are emotional or psychological. And here's the thing. You can't crave something you never had. So for example, there isn't a single person in this world that has never smoked a cigarette that craves tobacco or nicotine. Not going to happen. Not a single person in this world that has never tasted a drop of alcohol, like Dr. Goldhammer or Dr. Furman. They've never had a drink in their life. If you've never had it, you cannot crave it. The truth is that taste preferences there's only one inherent in the human being, and that's breast milk. Every other taste preference is learned. So if you haven't had it, you can't crave it. So what happens is, right, I crave cherries and persimmons. Well, those are good things to crave. So here's the thing. This is where the environment becomes so important to the process of optimal health and wellness, is that I've always said, or at least I haven't always said it, but for the last 10 years, I've said, if it's in your house, it's in your mouth. And that's the biggest problem I see with the people in my Ultimate Weight Loss program, is they're not willing to clean up their environment. And if it's there, it's going to call to you. You know, I've had people that finally did what I said, which is clean up their environment. And they've said, you know what, my cravings didn't go away until I cleaned up my environment. So a lot of times cravings are emotional because you have memories of having them and they make you feel good. If you're craving, like, you know, if you're craving broccoli, or like someone just said, cherries or persimmons, it's not a problem. But if you're craving a processed food or an animal product, that's because it has more of a drug-like effect for you than a food-like effect. So when you eat these hyper-palatable, hypercaloric food like sugar and flour and oil and cheese, things like that, you're getting a blast of dopamine in your brain that is much more high than if you ate the whole natural food. And so really, if you think about it, if what you're craving is your drug, you're craving that high that you get from these foods. And what happens is you mentioned this with the salt, which is brilliant. You said that after about 3 weeks, you didn't need it as much because you're talking about a process called neurological adaptation or neuroadaptation. And I'll explain it briefly in a way that a lot of people understand if they're as old as me, if they grew up in the 60s where we were raised drinking whole milk. And then at a certain point, our parents switched us to non-fat milk. And at first we complained because the non-fat milk was very watery and it didn't taste good to us, but our parents said, too bad. And then after a while, we got used to it. This is neuroadaptation, and the non-fat milk tasted fine. So much so that if we went to a relative or friend's house and now we're served whole milk, it was disgusting, like paint. Neuroadaptation happens also with other senses. So for example, if you go to a movie and you're late and it's dark, you don't see very well at first. But if you just stay still for a minute, your eyes adjust and now you can see your seat. Well, your brain chemistry, your taste buds can actually go through this process of neuroadaptation. And so what happens is most people are eating such a diet that's so high in sugar, fat, and salt. Rock concert, and all you heard was loud rock music every day. You know, coming home and listening to like Brahms' lullaby would be like, this is music? I can't hear it at all. And so these cravings can get dialed down when we remove them. But the thing is it can take a period of time to adjust. Now, you said 3 weeks for salt. That's fantastic because for most people, it's about 30 days. For a higher fat diet, it could be 90 to 120 days. In which sugar, the truth is we never lose our taste or desire for sugar. We have taste buds on our tongue for sweet and salty. So we always have been genetically hardwired to prefer the taste of sweet and also salt. but we can learn to get it in a more healthful manner, like you had mentioned, from sea vegetables. There's a sea vegetable called dulse that comes in a smoked flavor that, for people that have eaten bacon, tastes like bacon. Delicious. So you can learn to satisfy your sweet tooth with the fruit, the whole fruit, and nothing but the whole fruit, with cherries and persimmons or dates or things like that. But as long as you see, the thing is as long as you're indulging cravings, they won't go away. And as long as there's sugar and flour and things in your environment that you're trying not to eat, it's going to be really hard, because these cues in the environment trigger us to eat. If you are somebody, I do watch television, but I always put it through the DVR so I don't have to see the commercials, because those can even trigger people to have cravings. You know, I went to a movie the other day, and in the previews, you know, they showed this really intense commercial for what they sold at the concession stand, really focusing on using sound and visual images, you know, to try to get us to buy that thing. Billboards everywhere. So we're constantly being triggered in the environment. If you go to stores in the United States that have nothing to do with food, for example, hardware stores and pet stores, at the register, you will find human candy being sold. So it's really become an environmental disease. You can't get away from it at all. So the thing is people need to know that cravings do go away, but not if you indulge them. It's sort of like when people smoke, and I used to smoke, by the way. When you smoke, believe it or not, you're not really getting pleasure from the tobacco or the nicotine. What you're getting is avoiding the pain of detoxification and withdrawal from not smoking. And so a lot of people that are addicted to sugar and flour and all kinds of vegan treats, they're not so much getting the pleasure that they got like the first time they tasted it. What they're doing by indulging the cravings is not feeling the discomfort of not having them. So there's kind of a big difference there. And if you pay attention to that, it can really help. And if you're in a group of people all trying to accomplish the same goal, it can help. Cravings will go away. I mean, I was such a sugar addict till I was 43 that it took about 3 weeks of crying every day and having headaches and being moody and irritable and having diarrhea, because that's all I ate for 43 years. I didn't eat fruits and vegetables. I only ate sugar in the form of mostly Slurpees and soda and candy and things like that. It was vegan. So it is a difficult process for a lot of people. How long it takes will depend. Having group support is really helpful. But really, the most important thing is cleaning up your environment. And I'm not just the one that says this. Every expert, doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists have said the #1 rule for healthy living is no junk food in the house. It really does predict your success. And so it's hard because everywhere you go, there's going to be junk food. But at least you've got to have your home pristine, and that really helps. But there's healthy ways to indulge cravings. Like you said, you indulge your salt craving with a healthful food called sea vegetables, which is high in iodine and high in minerals. You can indulge your sweet cravings with fruit. You know, there's in the cooking class that I taught last night, I have a machine called a Champion Juicer. For home use, it would be more affordable for most people to get the Yonanas, but this makes the most creamy banana ice cream you've ever tasted. And we made the banana ice cream using nothing but ripe frozen bananas. And we made a little sauce out of cherries. It was a pound of cherries, and I think we put in 6 small dates. And we made these parfaits with the cherry sauce, the banana ice cream, the cherry sauce, the banana ice cream. And then we froze them a little bit so they got a little bit more hard. And the people went nuts. I mean, you can indulge your sweet cravings in a healthful manner. It's absolutely possible to do that. And fruit is the way to do it. It's just that while you're still eating sugar, the fruit isn't going to taste as good as it could while you're just eating fruit. Yeah.
What's your what do you think about this sauce-free protocol for everyone? Do you think it suits everyone? Is it good to be salt-free for kids? And for people, like I have I'm on the low border of blood pressure. So, and I personally, fast a lot. I practice fasting.
Nice.
So my blood sugar goes very low sometimes. And I have some people in my group that they doctors recommend visit a low blood sugar, and the doctors recommend them to add some salt to their diet. So,
this is such
for people concerned about the kids.
Right. This is a great question. And this, I'd love for you to, and he would do this, interview Dr. Alan Goldhammer. So there's a thing that there's in theory and in reality. So in theory, I could say, yeah, nobody should eat salt. But in reality, that's not going to happen because of what I call the evil trinity in my book on processed sugar, fat, and salt. Salt is the most difficult for people to give up. even people that are sugar addicts like myself. And that's because nothing really tastes like salt except salt. So here's the thing. So does everybody need to go salt-free? Absolutely not. And my boss, Dr. Goldhammer, might disagree, but here's the thing. What I would say that I believe most people should do is not eat processed foods, you know, things that come in a can, a box, a bottle, and a bag. And that if you are going to eat salt, add it at the table, right? You know, don't cook with it. So most Americans get their salt from processed food, believe it or not, bread, where it's hidden and you can't actually taste it on the tip of your tongue, as opposed to even potato chips or French fries where it's sprinkled on the surface. So first thing I would say is my general recommendation for people, whether they're vegan or not, is don't eat processed food. It's not food. Eat whole foods and eat more fruits and vegetables. That's number one. So here's the thing. If people want to use salt, there's ways that we can get them to use less salt. Well, first of all, by not eating processed food. Number two, by instead of cooking with it, where it actually just dissipates anyway, using it when the product is finished with the salt shaker, because even people that like salt, just like people that like sugar, vary in how much they like. Some people like a lot, some people like a little. Some people salt their food before tasting it. So what I would suggest is using salt, and get the most expensive salt you can find, the best sea salt you can, so that you'll use it judiciously, and then use it as the finish of the food so that the taste buds at the tip of your tongue can taste it. Because when you cook with it in a recipe, it dissipates, just like sugar and oil will as well. So that's my number one suggestion. The other suggestion I would have is you can also learn cooking methods where you won't need as much salt by using things like fresh herbs, using things like Benson's Table Tasting. If somebody has the goal to not eat salt, because there are people that probably would benefit from eating no salt or less salt, particularly people that already have high blood pressure, particularly people that have already suffered a cardiac event like a stroke or a heart attack. These people, we could argue, maybe need to go as salt-free as possible. If they won't go completely salt-free, what I would suggest is use these products that have less sodium. So again, we're not suggesting a no sodium diet. I was suggesting a no added salt diet for some people, particularly people that are food addicts, because sometimes that can cause them to have cravings for sugar. But there are a couple products I really like that I use in my book Unprocessed. One is called Raw Coconut Aminos. It's a soy-free, gluten-free soy sauce made out of coconut sap and sea salt. So it still has sodium, but it only has 95 milligrams per teaspoon, as opposed to 2,300 milligrams per teaspoon in a teaspoon of salt. So you could ostensibly have 24 teaspoons or 8 tablespoons of coconut aminos for the same amount of sodium in 1 teaspoon of salt, but you'd never use 8 tablespoons of this product. It's very salty. So right there is a way where you could use something with salt, but have less salt. Another product is called low sodium miso, but you have to make sure it's low sodium, because if you buy regular like miso at the Asian market, it could actually be higher in sodium than salt. There are 2 brands that are sold online and at natural food stores like Whole Foods called South River and Cold Mountain that have about 110 milligrams of sodium per teaspoon. Again, 1/24 as much sodium as salt. My partner in the Ultimate Weight Loss Program, John Pierre, likes to use a product called Fortisol. I don't have any right here, but it's a spray bottle. And so what you're doing is you're actually doing a little spritz on the surface of your food. So you're getting, it is salt, it's salt water basically, but it also has minerals. So you're getting much, much less salt. So these are things that I think of. Now, here's the thing. So if you eat the diet that I recommend, whole natural food, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes, and if your weight allows some nuts and seeds and avocado, you still get about 500 milligrams of sodium just in the food, especially if you're eating greens and you're eating vegetables. So how much can we add? Well, you know, when I talk to certain experts, they say, well, we really, you know, shouldn't probably go over 1,000. Well, what that would mean is that leaves only a 1/4 teaspoon of salt left a day for that 600 milligrams. I don't know if you've ever seen how that's like the size of my pinky nail. It's not that much. So again, I don't think everybody has to go salt-free. I really can't answer the question about children. This would be probably a better question for somebody like the dietitian Brenda Davis or Dr. Goldhammer. But I do know that there are kids eating this way that don't necessarily add the salt, and they seem to be thriving. But I wouldn't want to say that no one needs to ever eat salt or not eat salt. I think, again, I have a saying, when in doubt, leave it out. If it's a problem for you, don't have it. For some people, especially, remember, I'm dealing mostly with food addicts, a little bit leads to a lot of cravings. And so that little bit of salt, you know, in a case of a kid, for example, if the salt, by the way, is an appetite stimulant. It causes us to eat more food. So if you're somebody trying to shed pounds, it might not be a good thing, because whatever you put it on, you're going to want to eat more of. And you can prove this to yourself by taking something like Air Pop popcorn. Notice how much you eat, put salt on it, you're going to eat more. The thing is, with people that suffer from food addiction, it can not only cause them to eat more, but it causes the opposite effect, and then they crave the sweet and the sugar. So sometimes when they get rid of the salt, the cravings for the sweet go dial down. So again, I don't think everybody has to avoid salt, but there are such good seasonings now, like Benson's Table Tasty, like some of the spices that I use, like pepperoni spice, that you don't miss it as much. And as you said, a squeeze of lemon, citrus works beautifully for that, because the thing that's great about citrus is when you're combining it with foods high in iron, like greens, you increase absorption. But what's also great is you trick the taste buds, because the sour taste buds sit right next to the salty taste buds. And so by having that squeeze of lemon or lime in your savory recipe, you don't feel like you're missing the salt. But it is very hard for people. If they go on a no salt diet, it can take about 30 days for the food to taste good. And most people don't give it that much. That's why I recommend, you know, trying the raw coconut aminos and the low sodium miso and the Fortisol, so that you're still getting that hit that you want, but in a far less harmful manner, because you're getting 1/24 of the sodium. So I think that would be a good thing and doable for most people.
I see. Yeah, I agree. I was able to cut out the salt, and it helps me, and I taste my food. It's like a different taste. But it's very hard to socialize.
Yeah.
With this lifestyle, and that's people have concern, and I think that keeps them away from this way of eating, because they don't know how they're gonna socialize eating this way and not drinking alcohol and still having fun.
Right. Well, gosh, we could do a whole hour just on this, and you asked really the best questions. So one of the things I recommend for people to view, and it's completely free, it's at esteemdynamics.org. It's Dr. Doug Lyle's lecture, Getting Along Without Going Along. And he gives strategies on how to navigate the social situation. I'm not going to lie. I've been vegan 40 years. The social aspect is the hardest. Anytime you're different than everybody else, it can be difficult. So it's going to depend on the type of person, because somebody that is very agreeable, that's a people pleaser, somebody that's very extroverted, that seeks new experiences. There's another lecture on that website called The Perfect Personality. These people are going to have a much harder time than somebody like Dr. Goldhammer, who is introverted, who is very conscientious, who is not very social and not novelty seeking. So that if you watch The Perfect Personality and Getting Along Without Going Along, these are going to help you, because you're going to understand where you're coming from. And because for some people, especially women, this can be really, really difficult. So this is what I say to that. The short answer is get your act cleaned up at home. Live in a perfect environment without these temptations, so that when you go out, unless you're going out every night, that if you have a little bit of an indiscretion or a slip or a plan to even eat these foods, it's not the end of the world. Now, if you're an alcoholic and you have a slip on alcohol, it could be the beginning of the end of the world. And if you're a food addict, it could be troublesome. But for the average person, that's not going to define you, what you do once in a while. So that's one suggestion is get your act cleaned up at home, enjoy these social situations. One of the things you can do is you can pre-eat. So in other words, if you know you're going out to a restaurant, don't go with so starving that you're going to just eat the whole bread basket. Go with some food in your belly. And so then you don't have to eat as much there. You can eat less, that kind of thing. Now, as far as not drinking alcohol, that I can't really address, because I don't understand that. It's so harmful to our health. I mean, I don't know any of the vegan doctors that I respect that recommend any amount of alcohol. I'm talking not just from a health standpoint. The World Health Organization says they no longer will recommend any amount of alcohol is safe, that it's linked to every single cancer. So to me, I understand about the going to the restaurant and other people's house, but to understand like that if you feel like there's something wrong and you can't have fun without drinking, I think that's a problem. You know, alcohol is toxic to every cell in your body. You kill brain cells and liver cells with every sip of alcohol. If you're somebody struggling with the pleasure trap or food addiction or weight loss, it's deplorable. It's 7 calories a gram. Almost twice as calorically dense as protein or carbohydrates. There are plenty of ways to have fun without alcohol. I've had fun for 60 years without it, never had a drop. So that to me is I can't really address that. But the part about the food I can address because we have strategies we teach people like not going really, really hungry, eating really, really well at home, picking, learning how to navigate menus, for example. So if you're going to a restaurant, usually you know where you're going. I mean, unless you're just like, most people know where they're going. And so what you can do is almost every restaurant has their menu online now, at least if they have more than 3 locations, you can navigate the menu. So you're knowing in advance kind of what your options are. And oftentimes, if you don't see something on the menu, you can ask for it. So for example, like, let's say that you didn't see any vegetables. You want vegetables, let's say. And let's say you notice it was a non-vegan restaurant and they had a spinach omelet. Well, then they have spinach. There's tricks I can teach people to learn to navigate menus. You can always ask. The worst they can say is no. One of the things I do is I have something called a cooler purse on my free webinar, How to Eat Healthfully Anywhere. It looks just like a fashionable woman's purse, but it's a cooler. And I stash food in there if there's something I can't find. The other thing I want people to understand is you can have fun. You can be social without it always involving food. There's things you can do in life, in groups, as couples, as friends. You can go hiking, you can go to yoga class, you can go to the opera, you can go to the theater, you can go to a play. I could probably list 100 things. You can get a massage together, you can walk your dog, you can go to paint night. So what I'm trying to say is food is not the only way to have fun. It is one way. What the other thing is depending on what your goals are, sometimes, like especially somebody that maybe has been very overweight that isn't anymore, they inspire other people. And one thing they can do is they can say, hey, you know what, instead of going out to this restaurant, let's have a potluck at my house. You can offer alternatives. The problem is sugar's addictive, fat's addictive, and salt's addictive, whether you're overweight or not. And restaurants use more sugar, fat, and salt than we ever would at home. And that's why we like them so much. So I'm not saying never to use salt, never to go to a restaurant. It just really depends what your goals are. But there are restaurants that you can get more healthful food than others. So if you're the person in charge, pick that restaurant where you can see that they have a baked potato on the menu and salad and things like that you can eat. But it is hard. Socially, it's very hard because we are social creatures and we like to be accepted by our group. And a lot of people don't want to be different. And I get that. And watch that video, Getting Along Without Going Along, and that will help you a lot.
I wrote that video down and I'm sure want to watch it. And I agree with you. We went on a road trip and we stopped at Outback Steakhouse, and the menu, of course, is not vegan friendly. So I just asked for baked potato and salsa, and that's all I ate. And it had no salt, or well, maybe salsa had some, I don't know, but it had no oil. No, it did have salt. They did put a baked potato on a bed of salt, which was really frustrating. I'm like, why?
Yeah, well, because you'll eat more and then you'll order another, right? Yeah.
Great answers. I love everything what we hear here from you. Another question comes up about thyroid issue. And I know you do have an experience with thyroid issue. And so I would like you to, some people think that vegan style is not good for the thyroid, the plant-based style. And there is another concern about soy in regard to the thyroid issue. Would you please talk about this?
So again, not a doctor, but what I've heard from doctors, specifically Dr. Ellen Goldhammer, who, by the way, if any of your people in your group want a free consult, he'd probably do a Facebook Live with you too, if he could figure out the technology. I tried with him. There was a little glitch, but anyone can have a free consult with him simply by going to healthpromoting.com. If you fill out the intake questionnaire, Dr. Goldhammer will give you a free 20-minute consultation on the phone. I've never heard of soy and thyroid, so I can't comment on that. I happen to be allergic to soy. That's why I avoid it. But what Dr. Goldhammer says, a lot of the hypothyroidism, specifically the Hashimoto's, is linked to gluten. So that is what he has found. And he talks about these exact antibodies. And sometimes with people, if they go gluten-free completely, it can improve. Now, I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism when I was still quite overweight. That would have been in 2010. And I didn't want to be on medication because I thought that I would be a failed vegan. And so unfortunately what happened, and by the way, I share this story because I think if you're hypothyroid, it does make it more difficult to lose weight, but I lost all the weight that I had to lose while still being hypothyroid and unmedicated. It just took me a lot longer. So what happened to me by not medicating my hypothyroidism, and by the way, I had gone gluten-free, in 2014, I basically grew a beard, a blonde beard. It's called lanugo. It's a symptom of it was horrible. It's like I had to get my face waxed, and it's this very fine peach fuzz that babies get called lanugo, and I grew it all over my face and arms. And I didn't know what it was. And I had gone to the doctor. And then one morning I woke up and my neck was like, I couldn't swallow. I couldn't eat. And I had an ultrasound, and I had not quite yet a goiter, but my thyroid was extremely enlarged. And so I did go on medication. I'm on 50 micrograms of levothyroxine. I've stayed on it. And I know that there are people that teach courses and they say you can get off it, but I'm not going to mess around again like that, because the thyroid is sort of like your body's what's the word I'm thinking of? Like thermostat, you know? And I don't want a beard. It hurts a lot to get your face waxed if you've ever done it. I don't want to ever have to do that again. I mean, it finally went away, but I look like a golden retriever. So I'm staying on the medication, but get a good doctor. And it's so easy now to get a good doctor because all the medical doctors at True North do consults. It's like something like $95. They do them phone or Skype. They've got a bunch of medical doctors and naturopaths like Chilla Varesh and Anthony Lim and Peter Sultana, a new one, Dr. Solera, and Dr. Clapper, who just left True North after many years, also does private consults through his website. So that's what I would recommend to somebody that can't find a local plant-based doctor. I'm lucky in LA that my medical doctor, internal medicine doctor, is plant-based. But if you live somewhere else, that may not be the case. There's a website, I believe it's called plantdocs.com. Yeah. And you can find a plant-based doctor near you. But again, even with my local plant-based doctor, I do consults from time to time with my True North doctor because I really think that they know what they're talking about there. So that's that.
Okay, now I would like to talk about your ultimate weight loss program. I'm sure you have many followers, many people in it, and I think we have one person, at least one person, who is in your ultimate weight loss program, and but we have many who are wondering about it and who are interested in it. And the question is, what is the success rate? Well, and are there people who after the program do the people go back to the lifestyle that they had before, or they can maintain this whole food, plant-based, sauce-free protocol for the rest of the life? And are there any relapses? How often? And another question is about the willpower. Do you think it's enough to have just the willpower, or there are some other important factors for success?
Right. I'm going to answer the second part of your question first, because the willpower is only required if you have to make a decision. And by that, I mean, willpower is a very short-lived commodity. It takes about 20 minutes for it to burn out. So if you've got junk food in the house and you're thinking, boy, that ice cream looks good, you've got about 20 minutes to not eat that before the willpower is completely depleted. But willpower is only required when you have to make a decision. And if the ice cream wasn't in your house, you don't have to decide not to eat it. And that's why the environment is so critical to your success. So I can't give you exact statistics because I don't conduct research, but what you'll see in the Ultimate Weight Loss Program is a continuum of people doing very well, people doing very poorly, and people in the middle. Usually it has to do with how much they're complying with the program and how clean their environment is. And so what happens is the people that aren't doing well, either because they haven't really adopted the program or because they relapsed, they're not the ones that generally post. You know what I'm saying? They're not, right? Because they feel ashamed, and they shouldn't, by the way, because, right? Most people relapse at one time or another, and or you know, again, maybe it's just a slip. Like, you know, I think of a slip as like when you have a dietary indiscretion. Maybe you didn't plan it. You know, like you say, you went to the Outback Steakhouse, there was salt on the potato. I think of a relapse more like, oh my God, I had a bad day. My dog died. So now I'm going to eat this pint of ice cream, and then I'm going to eat the cook. You know what I'm saying? Like, a slip can be just a blip, and then you can get right back on track. And a relapse, you can get back on track too. But sometimes relapses are more severe because they tend to last longer and lead to more relapses, which is why I always say that your success isn't defined by if you relapse or even how often you relapse. It's defined by how quickly you get back on the program. Now, what we tend to hear about are the success stories. And that's like in every field. I mean, like, you know, you don't have award shows for people that were the worst performance in the movie. Well, actually they do. It's called the Razzies. That's a bad example. But for what I'm trying to say is, generally you hear about the people that are super successful. And so we have people in the Ultimate Weight Loss Program like Heather Goodwin, who has her own YouTube channel, who's lost over 300 pounds. It's called the butterfly effect. And so we tend to hear about these people. So I know that if you follow the program as designed, you will get results. But the thing is not everybody's going to be able to do it. So a better question would be, could we devise a test, or could we figure out a way as to who's going to be able to do the program? Because for some people, it is too strict. I'll be honest, because there's a thing that Dr. Lyle talks about called the ego trap, whereas if you set the bar too high, some people will fail because they think they won't even try because it's set too high. We have people at all different levels. I mean, we have people in the program that still smoke, that still drink quite a bit of alcohol. But the idea is when you're surrounded with like-minded people, and a lot of them are really crawling out of the pleasure trap and doing well, the hope is that someday you're just going to get inspired to do that. So people will relapse. I think it's a mistake to think that there is a program out there that is going to work 100% of the time for 100% of the people. You know, people do relapse. And that's the most critical thing, is to have a plan as to what you're going to do when you relapse. You know, the best defense is a good offense, and to try to be proactive and use some of the tools we give you in the program to not relapse in the first place. Like, you know, there's things we teach like judicious use of essential oils and green powders and vision boards and having food with you, things like that. But should you relapse, that's more important. What are you going to do? And know in advance, because it's probably going to happen. Now, it only happened to me once in 6 years. But again, I'm the leader of the program. I don't want to be going around relapsing. You know, I got everybody watching me. So I think what really works well about the program is the support of the group of like-minded people, because they all get it. It's not just a random vegan program where people are trying not to eat cheese. It's people that have suffered either from their weight or from food addiction, or for both. You know, we actually have slender people in the group, but they have the same brain that when they get sugar and flour, they just can't stop eating. And so it's having a tribe. It's having a group of people that get you. And I don't know what the statistics are, but I got to tell you, in general, the cure rate of food addiction is worse than drug addiction. And the reason is because you can live your life without tobacco or alcohol or cocaine, and you can go to rehab, and then you can choose not to use these substances again. You can't choose not to use food. You're going to be faced with decisions every day, multiple times a day. And so food addiction isn't something you overcome. Or obesity is something you manage. And then when people understand that it's a day at a time, a meal at a time, a bite at a time, and we do the best we can, and we give you, delicious recipes and strategies, but I'm not going to say it's easy. It's not, but a lot of people are doing it. And I think the more success stories we have, and people like Shada Soleimani, who's lost 120 pounds, and Kristen Bummer and Tammy Kramer, these are people that all have blogs, then we see, it's possible. Until somebody went to the moon, nobody went to the moon. But the minute the first man went to the moon, everybody could go to the moon. Same thing about breaking the 4-minute mile. And so we're creating more success stories. We've only run the program for less than 4 years, but we have a thing on Tuesday called Transformation Tuesday, where people post their pictures, and it still to this day blows me away. It's an abstinence-based program, which means it's based on the abstinence of sugar and flour, which for people that are addicted to sugar and flour is going to be as hard as an alcoholic recovery program that's obviously based on the abstinence of alcohol. So
I listen to your Weight Loss Wednesdays every Wednesday, and I don't know if I can say that I am a well, I'm definitely not a sugar addict. I don't know if I'm a food addict. I do like some salt.
I think everybody likes salt. I don't think it makes you an addict just because you like it.
And I don't need to lose weight, but I still considering to join your program just for that support. I think the support, the environment of people who you deal with on daily basis is what keeps you focused and what keeps you motivated and keeps you on track of this lifestyle.
So I just saw a comment, what would be a good substitute for sugar? Fruit. That's the only substitute I can think of. And actually, believe it or not, Mark, the best substitute for sugar is green vegetables, because the more greens you eat, the more alkaline you become. And there's compounds in greens that actually fight cravings for sugar. But, you know, we have people that join, like doctors and nurses and dietitians and health coaches, that are not overweight or food addicted, but they eat this way. And so there are actually, as crazy as it sounds, there are people that eat SOS free just for health. And they wanted to be with a group of people that actually could give them recipes and just eat that way. So, yeah.
I agree. Someone was also asking about your recommendation of good vegan places in LA.
Well, you know, there's a website called happycow. I think it's .net.
Yeah,
the problem is most of the vegan restaurants are going to use a lot of sugar, a lot of fat, and a lot of salt. There's a restaurant that's not even vegan, but I've worked with a few restaurants here to create like oil-free options. They won't do salt-free. I've never worked with a restaurant that is willing to do no salt, because there's a saying in food production: no salt, no sale, no fat, no flavor. So they won't do that. But there's a restaurant called Sharky's Mexican Grill where you can get an AJ plate, an AJ bowl, or an AJ burrito. And there will be no oil, but there will be some salt. There's a restaurant called Hugo's. It's, again, these are not vegan restaurants, but these are restaurants I've worked with where they have a large oil-free menu on the secret menu where there's sauces, soups, and salad dressings. Many of them have no oil. So those are places I would go because I know I could get oil-free. There's a place, it's not really a restaurant, it's a chain. It's called Flame Broiler. I eat there because it's just rice and vegetables, no SOS. There's a lot of delicious high-end vegan restaurants here, but again, they're hyper palatable, sugar, fat, and salt. So it's something I used to do. I've been vegan a long time, but for the last 6 years or so, I've got to stay out of the restaurants if I want to maintain my food sobriety and my calm brain and my 50-pound weight loss. Restaurants, for me, you know, they are the kiss of death, because they are just
more restaurants with Chef AJ plates.
That would be amazing, you know. And I think if somebody could open up an SO, the thing is who would go? You know, we had a restaurant in LA about 25 years ago called Gratis, which I believe means free in Spanish, and it tanked. They had the foresight to make things like guacamole out of peas, and it was a low-fat restaurant. I mean, I liked it. It tanked because people want sugar, fat, and salt. That's what sells. That's what gets your brain excited. That's what gets you all the dopamine. You know, when people understand that the reason we like these foods isn't so much for the flavor. We think it's because of the way they taste. It's because the more calorically concentrated the calories, the more dopamine is released, and then we feel good. That's why we like sugar and flour and alcohol and oil and peanut butter and all those kind of things. So it's quite a process to get people to first understand it and then to actually do it. So yeah, but it's a worthy process.
What about fruits and dates? I see, like, I have some people who are still overweight and they do this lifestyle, they go sauce free, but they eat a lot of fruits and dates, and probably the weight doesn't go down that fast.
Right. That was me for many years. I went SOS free in 2008, but it wasn't until 2012 that I started losing weight, because I was eating lots of dates and lots of nuts, which are very helpful, especially compared to, you know, eating white sugar and white flour. But you got to realize they're calorically dense, whereas fruit is 200 calories a pound, 300. Dates are 1,300 calories a pound. And so I look at dates sort of like methadone. It's a great way to get people off of refined sugar, but they are very, very calorically dense. Still, I would rather see people eating the sugar from the fruit than from the processed sugar, eating it in its whole food form.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. I think our time is kind of, we're running out of time right now. I know the hour flew by so fast.
You had such wonderful questions. Thank you.
Eye-opening, and I'm on behalf of all our community, I thank you for your time and effort, for all you do for people. And yes, thank you, Bailey, for being in every video. I plan to see you in September in Las Vegas. I believe there is
that would be amazing. A live conference. That's going to be fun. Yes. With Dr. Neil Barnard. Tickets, by the way, if you buy your ticket by January 31st, you save $250 on the live Ultimate.
I just have to look into hotels and stuff.
Oh, that hotel is $79 a night. It's the best. We haven't.
Oh, really?
Okay. Yeah, $79 on Thursday and Sunday, and $129 on Friday and Saturday. And we have people staying 5 to a room. It's very affordable.
Yeah, I love this. I saw the list of the speakers, and I really, really would like to see them all and hear them all.
This is Sabaka, by the way. This is a Sabaka.
Sabaka. Yeah. My Sabaka sleeps.
I love Sabakas, and that's at the end of the day. That's why I do this for all the Sabakas out there. Yeah.
Okay, AJ.
Right, thank you so much.
So much.
Take care.
We'll see you soon, and I'll see you tonight too at your Wednesday
at 4 o'clock.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Hey, bye, Bailey. Say goodbye.